Hey guys, here we are for a short track guide in the NASCAR Next Gen car at Michigan International Speedway. For this track guide, I'm going to show you my qualifying run and then give some tips for how to approach the race. For this qualifying run, I'm using the fixed setup with a steering pinion of 2.08 and a brake bias of 51%. However, I recommend using a steering pinion of 1.83 for the race to help save tires. For this track guide, I'm going to do something a bit different this time. As my qualifying laps were almost identical, I'm going to show both of them and then analyze one of them in slow motion. Now let's get on to the qualifying run. So looking at our qualifying times, you can see that they are almost identical, with the first lap being a 39.191 and the second being a 39.189, so just 0.02 of a second apart, and that ended up putting us second place on the grid. So now let's look at one of those laps in slow motion. As we start our second lap here, getting a good exit out of turn 4 and cutting down the track just to shorten the distance, going below the white line, and as we come to start our lap here, crossing the finish line just around 190 miles per hour. We're going to be sliding up the track here to give ourselves a wide approach for turn 1. As we head into turn 1, we're looking for some reference points for when to turn in, and as we pass this light on the fence, we're looking up ahead, and we can see that track ahead, like there's darker asphalt here, and then up to this point it's kind of lighter. So we're going to be using this darker asphalt as like a reference point. As we approach this darker asphalt, we're kind of alongside it right around here. That's when we're going to be trying to cross this top seam into the lower area. Also, we're going to be looking at this fence here. Just before the Michigan sign, there's this orange sign. We're going to be using that as a reference point for when to get off the gas. So you can see getting off the gas, going below the seam, small tap of the brakes for some rotation. We're also going to be looking ahead. You see there's this little lighter patch here. We're going to be trying to put our left sides just alongside that and eventually getting down to this first seam here. You want to be holding this seam all the way as we're passing these billboards here. You don't want to be sliding up until you pass those billboards, or else you might get into the wall out of two. So again, holding that inside line quite late, then and use up all the track on exit. Now, one thing that's different between the backstretch and the front stretch is that the backstretch is flat while the front stretch is a bit banked, so you're able to get on the throttle a bit earlier out of turn 4 because you have the banking to help you. Heading into turn 3, there aren't as many reference points, but as we pass this light on the fence, we're still going to be keeping the throttle pinned and then letting off partially a little bit past that, and we're going to be using this Michigan sign as reference for what lane we should stay in. So as we're passing this sign, we want to just be getting into the second seam just past that sign. Again, waiting to get back on the throttle fully. You can see your partial throttle, not ever really getting down to this bottom seam. Getting back on the throttle, it looks like we're going to get into the fence here, but again, that banking will help us not run wide, using up all the track, getting right up to the wall, and then immediately cutting back down just to shorten the distance. And as we get down to this Geico sign, again, holding the car below this white line, crossing the finish line just about 190 miles per hour, and that's a lap around Michigan International Speedway. And here are the settings that we're using for that lap. There's a track temp of 104 degrees, air temp of 78 degrees, and track usage of 36%. Now, one more thing to mention is that during the race, it's really hard to pass in the inside line here, so you really want to cover off that outside lane. So, as you can see, as we enter in the corner here, we're kind of staying in this third lane and then cut down to the second. I would say to be more defensive, you kind of just want to stay in this third lane, just that way no one can really get on your outside. Even if you're not really going to take the fastest lane, it's more of a defensive maneuver, and so I would say for the fastest laps, when you're on fresh tires, take that inside line, that second lane, and then slide up. But when you're on older tires, just try to hold that third lane, just prevent anyone from getting your outside. So yeah, hopefully this track guide was helpful. Good luck in your races at Michigan, and see you next time.